You all for joining another edition of SPINcast. Today's guest we have from Fox News 46, Josh Sims, their sports broadcaster there. I'll let him really get into the details of how he got into the position he is today and kind of go from there. But we certainly are excited to have Josh on board to talk just a little bit about the broadcasting side of things. So without further ado, thank you this morning for joining us. How are you doing today?
Good to be with you, man. Things are good, I guess as good as they can be during this time, but we're all trying to make the most of it, right? So that's the most important thing while staying safe. So that's the important thing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, hopefully this will give our community a little bit of insight into who you are, what you do, and give them an opportunity to do some things while they're, staying at home. So without further ado, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you start? Where'd you grow up? How'd you end up becoming interested in this field in particular, and where you are today?
Yeah, so I grew up in East Brunswick, New Jersey. For those that aren't familiar with Jersey, it's right around the corner from where Rutgers University is. So Central Jersey, I grew up down the street from Rutgers University. As a kid in high school, I played soccer, played basketball, ran track. So three-sport athlete. Sports were a huge part of my life growing up. When it came time to go to college, my growth spurt stopped, and I knew it was time to kind of figure out a different route. So basketball was always my favorite sport, but I knew I wasn't going to play at the next level unless I played Division II or Division III, which I did have offers, but I decided to focus on academics. Ended up getting into Villanova and going to Villanova, which was a great decision. Loved the school, had a blast there, majored in communications with a concentration in journalism and public relations while I was there. Unfortunately, when I was time for me to graduate was 2009. So that was right around one of the big recessions that hit. So people just weren't hiring. So I decided my senior year to give grad school a shot. And I never really thought about going into TV. But the way the market was at the time, my parents were like, well, you can go to more school. Why don't you give TV a shot? And I had never thought about it being a TV journalist. I thought of it as a pipe dream, but, I always thought I'd be doing print or something like that. And, I had internships with a newspaper. I had internships at a radio station, and I knew I didn't want to do the print thing. So I took the GREs, didn't have a great score, but my written part was good enough to get me into Syracuse. So I went to the Newhouse School of Public Communications up there, did their grad program, which was great. And it gave me the opportunity to put together a tape to learn about the industry and, get my first job in TV. And, the funny thing about it is, I said I love sports. My first job wasn't even in sports. I worked for a small NBC affiliate in South Jersey, right outside of Atlantic City. And for that job was a general assignment news reporter. So for a year and a half, I was covering crime, covering politics, covering, the little fluff pieces and all that stuff. But while I was there, the reason I actually got that job was because it took me 6 months to get my first job, which is about the norm when you graduate. And during that time, I was reaching out to anybody and everybody I could to try and figure out a way to get into the biz with any connection. If they went to Nova, I would reach out to them. If they were from New Jersey, if they went to Syracuse, if they were an African American, any type of in I thought I might have that they might actually open up my email, I would send with the subject line, "Hey, a Villanova alum," or this or that. And I connected with the sports guy at this station that I eventually got the job for. And he let me come down and shadow him for a day, which turned out to be great because, we stayed in touch and I would just pick his brain from time and time again. And then one day he was like, "Hey, we have an opportunity in news, not in sports. Our department's filled, but, I know you have some news on your tape from school. If you want, I'll put in a good word for you with the news director, and you can come down and interview for the general assignment reporter position." So, that got me a foot in the door. He helped me get the job. And then while I was there, what I would do is I would always, keep an ear out to see if they ever needed any help in the sports department. And it got to the point where he would let me, if both of them were out, I got to fill in. If they needed something after my shift, of course. And we were kind of in the DMA of Philadelphia while not being in Philadelphia.
Mhm.
So if they would need something from, post from the Phillies, post from the Sixers, post from the Eagles, he would be like, "Hey, once your shift is done, game tonight, We won't be able to get up there because we have to do our show. We didn't have live capabilities with our TV station. But if you go get me post, I'll bring it back. I'll use it tomorrow. While you're there, shoot yourself a stand-up on the court or something like that. So after doing that a number of times, getting enough to scratch together for a tape and filling in a couple times, I had enough to put together a resume tape. They also let me work on the high school football Friday night show, which was always big. And I stressed that I had to do this after working my normal shift. So I'd work 9 to 6 and then stay after for no additional pay, but just because I wanted to get into sports that much and do that. And it got me enough to get a tape. And I got a weekend sports job in Albany, New York. So up there, we were covering kind of lower level colleges, so Division II, Division III, football, hockey, lacrosse, big up there, and basketball. And then we cover a lot of high school, and did that for 3 years. And then it was time to move on. I got a job down here in Charlotte with Fox 46, same kind of role, but we just do a lot more with obviously professional sports. Panthers, Eagles, NASCAR, and all the big colleges, UNC Charlotte, Clemson, South Carolina, Davidson, all of those. We get the opportunity to host shows now with our Panthers show. We host a NASCAR show every week. We do a ton. So it's been a blast. I've covered some really cool things I never thought I would. Covered the Super Bowl. I was on the field when the Panthers went. I've covered the Daytona 500 3-4 times, covered, some major golf events, just about everything you could think of, NCAA tournament, NBA playoffs, covered it all. So it's been pretty cool, been an interesting journey. And the thing about this business is everybody's story is the same. So I tell you my path to get here. Ask someone else that's in the same position I am, it's completely different.
Gotcha. Well, it sounds like obviously you've had to pay your dues and had that ladder of success, if you will, to climb, and we'll see where you are overall, certainly. But it's not easy for those out there in the community to think, hey, it's easy, just grab a mic and do your thing. It's certainly not that. It's a lot of hard work behind the scenes, and obviously you have to get a couple of breaks to get to the point where you are. Because I know just from a few friends, it's an incredibly competitive field. There are a lot of people that want to do exactly what you're doing. So congrats to you to get to where you are today. And certainly that's a great story. You talked about a number of the different sports that you've had the opportunity to cover through the years. And obviously, certainly here in Charlotte, there are so many. Do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite sport that, man, if I was relegated, I only can cover one thing, what would that be?
Yeah, the funny thing is because I've always been a hoop guy. So basketball is my favorite sport to play, favorite sport to watch. But surprisingly, my favorite sport to cover is NFL. It's just, it's hard to describe unless you're in it, covering an NFL game on a Sunday. It's just the atmosphere is just something different. The first time I covered an NFL game was 2015. And it was a road game at the Jaguars, and the Jaguars weren't good at this point. It was Panthers Jaguars, and I remember just being on the field during the national anthem, and man, I had goosebumps. Like, it was one of the coolest feelings ever because I'd never done this before, and I'm like, man, this is the NFL. Like this is it. So I always say that's probably my favorite sport to cover. But if I did want to focus on something, I would want to be covering the NBA in some capacity or college hoops in some capacity. Just kind of like I would love basketball to be my beat if I had the opportunity to choose, and whether it's with your NBA TVs or your ESPNs or even one of the networks. I always was hoping they would have had a Big East network back in the day, but we know that's the heyday of the Big East is kind of gone. But you got the ACC network, you got the Big Ten network. So I would love to be in a point to cover basketball because that's just my favorite sport.
Good deal. Now, again, people would love to be in your shoes and having the ability to get on the field and cover these sports and talk to these athletes and things of that nature. Again, not all glamour. Let's talk about some of the difficulties, meaning in your work today, what do you feel is the most difficult part of the job currently?
Yeah, I think it comes down to time. I think the biggest thing for what we do is time, because you're constantly pulled in so many different directions. You're constantly under deadline. And, we all don't have the most resources in this. Most sports departments are 2 to 3 people, and these 2 to 3 people are doing the job of like 10, 15 guys, and, for instance, any given Sunday, we're up early, we do a pregame show from 10 to 11 for the Panthers. But I mean, you get up, you have to drive to the stadium, you have to prep and do a run through and all this stuff. So you're up maybe 6 o'clock on a Sunday, and that's just for a home game, and then, by the way, then after the pregame show, you wait around and you cover the game at 1 o'clock. We do a postgame show right after the game, and then we do a 6 o'clock news, and then we do a half-hour sports show at 10:30 that night. So, excuse me, you're talking about being up how long? Basically all day, and time is constantly flying. And I love what I do, obviously, but it does it is very time consuming, and there's points where you realize, oh, I haven't eaten today, or I haven't taken even a step back to breathe. But you're always constantly battling that time, because before you know it, you're up against the next deadline. All right, we had to get this show done, but now turn around, we got another show we got to prep for, we got another show we got to prep for, we got to get this done, that done. So you're constantly always looking at the clock, up against the clock. It's the opposite of one of those jobs where you're staring at the clock like, when is this day going to end, man? When is it going to hit 5 o'clock? With us, it's like, can somehow I slow down time? And that's not to mention every sportscast you do. We get maybe 3 minutes in our early show and 4 to 5 minutes in our late show. So you're trying to cram in the news of the day about the Hornets, about the Panthers, about NASCAR, about the college teams, all into, a 3-minute segment, which flies. It sounds like a lot of time, but by the time you get through maybe 2-3 stories, you're at 3 minutes and that's it. So in another sense, you're always battling time when you're doing your broadcast, and you got to make sure you get to the point. You're not rambling. You're not taking too much time, because you got to get in, give the facts, let them know what's happening, and get out and get on to the next story. So in that sense, you're battling time, and then you're battling time in your personal life, because you just don't get it. Like I've missed out on countless weddings, birthday parties, vacations, just events, just because, sports happen on the weekend. Football, college football, NFL happens on Sundays, college on Saturdays, high school football is Friday nights. You're going to be working on weekends. So just think about it. If you want to be able to go to such and such in season, you could take vacation time, but you take off. I talked about the amount of people in the sports department. That means the other person that's left working has to do all the work for the 2 people while you're off, doing this. So it's one of those things where you kind of pick and choose when you're able to take time off, and you have to be okay missing a lot of things you don't want to in this business, because you just don't get that time off like you want. Like I don't think I've ever had my birthday off in the 10 years I've been in this business. So, those are the things you battle. Time is the biggest thing that gets in the way.
Yeah, sounds very similar to a number of career paths for a number of people. If you want to be at the top of your game, if you want to be recognized as doing incredible work, it comes with obviously a lot of commitment, which in turn means a lot of sacrifices. And it sounds like that is the life you lead. But you do a great job, and that's kind of the benefit of it. So let's flip the script a little bit and talk about what's the most fun part of the job on a day-to-day basis, or in general. What do you find is the most enjoyable aspect of it?
Yeah, I just love that every day is different. And, you could say it's kind of the same, because every day, like I said, we go in, we do our meeting, we pitch our stories, and then we go out and cover and do the news at 6 and do the news at 10, or do this pregame show and this postgame show. But I mean, even going to cover the same events, it's still always different. No game is really the same. There's always different storylines that crop up. You're always doing different interviews. You're meeting so many different people. And just the people you meet make it awesome, because you just establish these connections that turn into cool relationships going forward. I mean, I can't tell you the countless amount of people that I've met on a story, and then we've circled back around and we've done stories again, and then we've just become friends out of it. And it turns into not even like a business thing. It's just checking up. Hey, how you doing? Let's talk. How's the family? That type of stuff. So I just love that. And, like I said before, I love covering the games. There's so many times I've been at an NFL game and been like, this is so cool to be able to cover this. And then, to have the access that we do, you're not just sitting there as a fan, you're in the press box, and then you get the privilege that many people don't have to get the questions that you want answered. Like, why did you do this on this play? How did you feel on this play? This and that. You get to go into the locker room and ask the players afterwards. You get to talk to the coach and ask him afterwards. And that type of access is so cool, because I remember, you know, as a Villanova guy, I went to the championship game back in they won in 2016, they won in 2018. I went to the one in 2018. And I remember going as a fan, and the game ended and Villanova had won. And I was like, man, I just want to go down on the court, you know, because like any other day covering an event, I could do that. And I go in the locker room and hear what they have to say about it. And here it's like, oh, wait, we have to leave? Like, I can't do that. So it's such a weird thing, because I should have been so excited my team won. But all I could think is, all right, what are they saying now? All right, what's going on in the locker room? How are they celebrating? Because that's such a big part of what we do. You have the greatest access people would kill to have, and you get to have that. And sometimes I think we take that for granted. Sometimes, you know, I was talking to a friend that worked at another station one day, and I remember it was just one of those days where we were bouncing all over the place, and we were at like a college game earlier, and we were at maybe like a practice later in the day, and then that night it was Celtics Hornets, and Kemba was still here, and we got there and we're like, you know, I hate that I had to come to this. I just want to go back and get something to eat and go and just sit down for a minute. And it turned out to be one of the most exciting fourth quarters ever. I mean, Kemba could not miss a shot. He was going off, and the Hornets crowd that had been so bad, it was so loud in there that day. And the Celtics were playing great, and Kemba was going off, and it was this come down to the wire game. And we just both looked at each other and we're just like, I'll never complain again, because like we didn't want to go to this game, and it turned out to be such a cool experience that, you know, those are really the things I love about it, because you get this access that people would kill to have, and we're privileged to have that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Well, I think we are right about up against it on time. So first off, again, I will really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us a little bit about your day-to-day, some of the ins and outs that most people may not get to realize, and obviously your journey to where you are today. I'm sure we will continue to see you every night. So we appreciate the work you do to keep us informed, even though we're in different times right now. I do get that.
Yeah.
But hopefully sooner than later, we'll get back to a little bit more of a sense of normality and kind of go from there. So Josh, thank you again so very much. We wish you all the best, and we look forward to watching you on Fox 46. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Rick. It was great talking with you.
All right.